Cybersecurity workers are burned out and it's having an impact. Google may be losing its supremacy in answering tech support issues, and executives say they'd rather have a robot making key decisions. These stories and more on #trending for Monday, April the 24th. I'm your host, Jim Love, CIO of ITWC, IT World Canada and TechNewsDay in the US. The recent wave of tech layoffs is affecting cybersecurity workers, and not in a good way. It's leaving them exhausted, overextended, and many are eager to quit their jobs. A survey done by pen testing firm Cobalt asserts that 77% of security professionals say their departments have faced layoffs in the last 6 months. Another study done by HackerOne says that over 40% of companies plan to make even more security headcount reductions in the next 12 months. This has left workers strained, with 61% of cyber workers surveyed reporting burnout, according to the Cobalt survey. Shrinking security budgets and decreasing worker headcount are leaving companies with more unpatched, hackable flaws in their systems. And half of workers affected by layoffs now want to quit their jobs. Experts say organizations will need to get creative to stave off burnout and to keep their networks secure as they battle uncertain economic conditions. Catherine Wong, Cobalt's chief strategy officer, told Axios that even if someone doesn't quit, but they want to quit, they're not going to be doing their job at 100% if they're feeling so overwhelmed that they get burned out. She added, a person in that mental state is not going to be in a position to do an extraordinary job. AutoGPT is the latest in hot AI offerings, and it's been exploding on social media. As we noted in our story last week, this is an open source app created by a game developer, and it's capable of using either ChatGPT 3.5 or even ChatGPT 4. But the big difference is that where ChatGPT requires prompting, AutoGPT allows you to set a goal, and it will develop its own prompts and drive to that goal. AutoGPT also has the ability to interact with other apps, software, and services, both online and local, like web browsers and word processors. So where ChatGPT 3.5 stalls because it doesn't have data past 2021, AutoGPT tells you that it needs to access the web, and it'll do it. The user sets a role, what or who the person is that AutoGPT is emulating. So you could ask it to take the role of an office manager who's charged with finding the best printer. And then you give it an objective, find the best printer from all of those available on the market. And give me a list of the top 5 choices along with the pluses and minuses of each. AutoGPT will go and do that task, developing its own prompts along the way, and it'll even look at areas where it's weak and how it can improve. Now, you don't even need to read the response. It has speech synthesis that can be hooked in, which makes it, at least theoretically, able to make or even receive phone calls. Now, there's a growing market in apps to improve or extend AutoGPT, and these are all interconnected by API keys. And like every other AI out there, AutoGPT can make mistakes, and although it can remember everything within a single session and even recover if the session is interrupted, it has no long-term memory. But the coolest thing about AutoGPT, if we can describe things in those terms, is that it offers the promise of being able to do automation at the mundane level. For example, organizing a meeting, a complex task that most people find frustrating, could be easily automated and scheduled by an AI of this nature. And if that's possible, what other use cases could be developed that even a small or medium-sized business could adopt? ITWC's research lab is installing AutoGPT, and we'll have more for you as we work through our cases. But if you have great ideas for use cases, we'll see if we can work them into our research. Contact me directly at jlove@itwc.ca. And coders and software engineers out there, if you're worried about losing your job to ChatGPT, we have some good news and some bad news. Well, let's start with the bad news. Get that out of the way. Another company's entered the code by AI race. Google announced last Friday that its AI software, Bard, can now be a programming assistant. Bard can do code generation, debugging, explaining code snippets. It knows more than 20 program languages. So with that, and Microsoft's Copilot for GitHub, there's real competition out there. Moreover, these programs are getting better and better. Where ChatGPT 3.5 could write a small program, Version 4.0 is vastly improved and can take on much more complex and longer programs. And for the frustrated QA analyst out there, both of these are probably better at commenting their code than the average programmer. So what's the good news? Well, while the code is solid, it's often, according to some reports, not as secure as it should be. 4 researchers from the Université du Québec in Canada have looked at the security of code generated by ChatGPT. They have published a paper with the title, "How Secure is Code Generated by ChatGPT?" Spoiler alert, the answer is, according to the computer scientists, not very. The results were worrisome, the authors noted. We found that in several cases, the code generated by ChatGPT fell well beyond minimal security standards applicable in most contexts. In fact, when prodded to whether or not the produced code was secure, ChatGPT was able to recognize that it was not. Part of this might stem from safety features in ChatGPT itself. These are designed to prevent it from writing code that can be used to attack other systems. Presumably, but we're not certain, Google's Bard may have the same restrictions. And safety measures have been shown to make these models less intelligent. For the reason, code development needs to be carefully supervised by programmers who are able to spot flaws and, as Google suggests, instruct the AI to address them, or put the Coke and Cheetos down and fix it manually. The good news? It'll do the commenting for you. Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google's $226 million in compensation for 2022, may not be going over well with Google staff. Pichai makes approximately 800 times the median pay of the average Google employee. And this is at the same time as the company has cut almost 12,000 jobs, or 6% of their global workforce. Earlier this month, Google employees staged a walkout at the company's London office. In March, employees walked out of the company's Zurich offices after more than 200 workers were laid off. It turns out that cybersecurity staff are not the only ones who are being overwhelmed. Apparently, business leaders are also suffering from decision anxiety, at least according to a study by Oracle in partnership with a firm called DKC Analytics. The study covered 14,000 employees and business leaders globally, including 4,500 from 6 Asia-Pacific markets: Singapore, Australia, South Korea, China, India, and Japan. And 74% of those surveyed in Asia-Pacific said the number of decisions they had to make increased tenfold in the last 3 years. Close to 90% said the volume of data was making decisions more complicated and was having a negative impact on their quality of life. Now, with the volume of data, a third of them said they don't know what sources of data to trust. And a shocking 71% said they'd simply given up on making a decision. In the wave of information overload, 92% said they'd changed the way they made decisions. 96% said they wanted to make decisions based on data, but they felt they lacked the skills to interpret data in meaningful ways. So what are they doing? Close to a third said they relied on gut, but 85% said they'd let a robot make their decisions. So, is this a phenomena only for those in Asia and Australia? I checked with my robot decision maker, and she said,
"Sorry, I'm not sure about that."
Great. So much for going to the Oracle. Is Google losing its supremacy in providing support advice? Now, we've all done it. You have a support issue, and what do? We ask Dr. Google. You Google it. And if someone comes to you for help without having Googled it, they can expect to be heaped with disdain. That's just how it works. But now there's a new kid on the block. According to a new survey by a firm with the wonderful URL of electric.ai, which has a report with the great title of Who Gives the Best Advice, ChatGPT versus Experts, 66% of those who responded said they went to ChatGPT for help with their IT problems. And in case you think this is just a Gen Z problem, the answer is no. They are most likely to seek IT advice from ChatGPT, with 83% of them saying they'd go there first. But a big majority of millennials would as well, at 67%, and even half of Gen X and, God forbid, baby boomers would go to ChatGPT over Google. So how accurate is ChatGPT? Electric asked 200 IT professionals to judge the 4 most searched tech questions. ChatGPT had an overall accuracy score of 39 out of 100. Although some questions like, how do I make my internet faster, got a much larger accuracy score, as high as 74%. Of course, if you live in the country like I do, the answer to, how do I make my internet faster is easy. You don't. And that's the top tech news for today. #Trending goes to air 5 days a week with the daily top tech news stories. And we have a special weekend edition where we do an in-depth interview with an expert on some tech development that's making the news. You can follow us on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Links to all the stories we've covered can be found in the text edition of this podcast at itworldcanada.com/podcasts. And we love your comments. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or on Mastodon as @TheRealJimLove on our Mastodon site, technews.social. Or you can just leave a comment under the text version at itworldcanada.com/podcasts. I'm your host, Jim Love. Take a deep breath, relax, and have a marvelous Monday.